If you're lucky, you may have found that Wii under the Christmas tree, and everyone could play bowling because even Grandma loves it. Moving on from Grandma though, besides family there's also a romantic aspect with the lights, mistletoe, and upcoming New Year for relationship kindling. In both of these long-running franchises with main series games and spin-offs galore, there's plenty of other potential love interests hinted at or joked about in both kingdoms' lore. If we consider this a competition between heroes, just who is the manlier man? Who's more attractive to these virtual ladies? The only other mention of the hero being wed is in Oracle of Ages, in which a tree proposes to be Link's bride when she comes of age. Yes, a tree. An adorable tree, but a plant nonetheless. Perhaps the sole positive is that they're both able to get wood. Going back to the topic of Twilight Princess for a bit, Link and Midna seem to be a popular ship amongst the fans for good reason. Before we begin, let me explain what this video is not. It is not to try and convince you to play the N64 version rather than the 3DS remaster of Majora's Mask. In fact, I very much recommend the opposite to a new audience. This is to instead offer reason for it not being a total replacement, to avoid discarding the original entirely to make more room on that game shelf. So I encourage you to take that cartridge out of the trash, dust it off, and apologize. One of my go-to points on the expired visuals, including low resolution, is how the background trees of this game are assembled. It's tree wallpaper, in that the devs most likely spread trees.png on a blank wall and called it a forest. While this actually was the only way to save in the Japanese version, all other regions gave a solution: owl statues to work as temporary saves for this very dilemma. So if you're in the middle of a dungeon and Grandma suddenly starts choking on her supper in real life, you can go to any owl statue to temporarily save and quit, and make it to her funeral in time. So that essentially wraps things up. There's tons of smaller reasons someone would choose to play the original too, like all the different options for controller configurations: GameCube, Wii Classic Controller, Wii U Gamepad, Satan's Forked Prong, instead of the rather uncomfortable 3DS. Yeah. With little hope for Kafei's return and no explanation as to why he's disappeared, Anju's mother will begin to loathe her would-be son-in-law and wrongly assume he's left Anju for her best friend Cremia. Infidelity is some pretty heavy stuff to tackle in a Zelda game, but it yields hilarious responses with everyone involved. If worn in front of Anju's mom, the otherwise expressionless woman will become infuriated and shout at Link, and wearing it in front of Cremia is even better. She'll glare at you and ask if a certain nosy middle-aged woman put you up to the task of looking for him here, and that he's not at the ranch. It gets even spicier when Romani reveals her older sister's crush on the man, hinting at a true romantic entanglement. I love Kafei's mask, so it's the starting entry on here. See, even Anju loves it, and she has one of her very own and is definitely not crying underneath it. Next up is the, adults-only Romani's mask. One of my favorite places in Majora's Mask is the milk bar. I think it's funny that this is the way Nintendo censors alcohol. I mean, there's a character that gets tipsy from milk and is hungover the next day. Next up we have one of the scariest masks in the game, but unlike the all-night mask with creepy lore and design, this one is simply disturbing to look at. The Great Fairy's mask is not very beloved. It's admittedly ugly, but it gives Link some pretty gorgeous locks of pink hair that even sparkle when he's close to a stray fairy. But let's back up a bit, because that sparkle effect is not just aesthetically fabulous. There's not a ton of reaction to your yellow ears from NPCs, but this swordsman gives some hilarious dialogue telling you not to get your bunny dirty in the dojo. Regardless, it is made up for, as every cutscene with Link is now that much better, as they even have their own floppy animation physics. I can't really complain because it adds a ton of charm to the game this way. But the real reason I love this mask so much is because when paired with the Great Fairy's sword, you feel unstoppable. A speedy killing machine that feels almost as cool as the fierce deity, but not at all really because you can wear it anywhere. And you're still just a 10-year-old in bunny cosplay.
You got it set to M for Mini, when it should be set to W for Wumbo.
Real bomb chews of Majora are creatures that the mechanized bombs may be designed after. These guys have an explosive tail that ignites upon contact, blowing themselves up in the process. In Wind Waker, the spirit of these suicidal rodents are upheld, as bomb chews are what standard bomb-throwing rats are now called. So luckily in this era, evolution was kind, and a cruel god didn't Frankenstein this version of the monster with bombs as a literal part of their body. Lastly, the gelatinous choo-choos that reign over Termina Field cover many of Wind Waker's islands. Their design thankfully made cuter. Let's just say I am very glad there's no choo-choo jelly potions to be made from these guys. Link would probably fall dead. Not that dead though. He's said to come from generations of postmen, and is heavily implied to be a descendant of this one specifically, or his Hylian equivalent, if you believe that retcon about Termina disappearing after Link saves it. With this all said, there must have been some interspecies relations going on between this man and a member of the Zora tribe. Because remember, the Zora evolved into the Rito when Hyrule was flooded by its goddesses. With both Princess Ruto and Mipha of Breath of the Wild expecting to marry Link, this isn't exactly looked down upon in the world of Zelda. Just weird to imagine the bumbling postman having his happily ever after with a fish lady. Retaining his cartography skills and, whimsical design from Majora, the first game he appears in. While cut from the HD release, the GameCube version includes extra story bits when using the Game Boy Advance connectivity, unlocking a device dubbed the Tingle Tuner. At least I can still use this thing, thanks Miiverse. Vital information about the locations are also given by these fishmen, which can be seen as a step up from having this gentleman reintroduce himself every time cycle. Link owning property is a shared quirk as well, though I'd much rather hold the deed to a private island cabana than a flower.
Hey!
Link can interact with any of these three wild pigs in a ton of ways. Feed them with bait to uncover buried items, pawn them off for cash, or just throw the poor guys off massive cliffs. This is all horrific to experience for the first time, especially as a child. I remember that while certain parts of Majora's Mask scared me, this just about traumatized me. I remember crying to my mother explaining that I had played a video game where everyone turned into a zombie. She said, "What'd I tell you about playing these types of games?" My response was, "It's just Zelda." With all this said, it's important to note that nothing in this game, in my personal opinion, is too scary for children. I've realized that there's enough content for me to not just dedicate an entire month to Zelda collectively, but to Majora's Mask specifically. Due to this revelation from the goddesses, or lack thereof in Termina, I now claim March the month of Majora. Or I would if I didn't catch the acronym, which would be MOM, or Mom. Actually, maybe I'll use that for Month of Mother. But anyway, the new name is Majora's Mask Month. This sword is noticeably larger than the Kokiri sword, and looks much better carried around by the Hero of Time. It even swaps out his sheath for a red one, complementing the silver and gold swivel pattern quite nicely. Is this the fate of poor Mario? He deserves better than that for always rescuing the princess, with no expectations in return besides the occasional kiss on the cheek and freshly baked cake. Why, Mario? Why did this happen to you? If it was an officially wearable Happy Mask, however, and it gave Link the ability to jump, that'd be pretty sweet to use. Had Link been able to acquire this mask separately, it could have been used as a setup for funny dialogue, seeing as its possession suggests that the wearer is engaged. Since the Sun Mask is to be handmade in preparation for a wedding, it would be very humorous to have Link either wear it around Clocktown and get congratulatory praise for thinking the boy is getting married, or to be shown off to characters in search for a potential suitor, as they would think that Link is proposing to them at that moment. Imagine the possibilities! It'd be cute getting reactions from certain NPCs, like having Link talk to Romani at the ranch, made even funnier if spoken to her sister immediately after. It'd also be interesting in talking with the adults of Clocktown, either believing Link isn't old enough to understand what he's doing by wearing the mask in front of them, laughing it off, or having one creeper in the town be actually interested. Take that back, Link is supposed to be around 10 years old in the game. He could be older with Romani's mask though. Never mind, bleach for the eyes. There's also the fact that they add depth to the final battle against Majora's Mask, serving as counter enemies to an already engaging battle, forcing the player to switch up tactics and reevaluate priority. In other countries, notably Germany, the sound is more accurate to what an actual person sleeping really would sound like, making a noise. However, in countries like Japan, the characters used are more sound-oriented. Can mean snoring.
Ah!
The scene is hilarious, and just the fact that the food made for her is a major obstacle to overcome makes for a ridiculous scene to imagine, and a brilliantly executed run-on joke. Literally run on because you can experience it every time you rewind time.
Yeah.
It's a bit funny, albeit a bit weird, seeing young Link superpowered with muscles like the Incredible Hulk. Flexing after performing a quick-time event attack on the beast is strange, but I suppose if I had that newfound kind of power, I'd do the same thing, and I actually embarrassingly have when I used to work out regularly in high school. I felt like I had super strength. Sorry, Dad.